that is California. And that's why we see these people still going at it, still saying we want to get out of the United States because Donald Trump got elected. These are the people, the Cal Exit Group. And here's one bit of interesting irony here. They have established an embassy in Moscow. So these people who are complaining and saying the Russians hacked our elections, well, the people who want to secede, the Californians who want to secede from the United States, have now opened an embassy in Moscow. The group calls themselves Yes California. They're hoping for a Cal exit break for the United States, and I want to know what I can do to help them leave. Because as we pointed out, all of this talk about Hillary Clinton winning the popular vote, it's the margin that she has is the margin that she had in California. That support there, margin of 2.5 million votes there in California. If they subtract that, if they subtract the amount 1.7 that he won, that she won in New York, Donald Trump would have had 2 million more votes in the popular vote than Hillary Clinton did. That's the real issue. Now that brings us to the election today. The Electoral College met today in the various states. They met together and they cast their votes. I believe this is something that should have happened automatically. And now we see I think, an unprecedented number of protest votes. Typically, we don't have any. There's been a few where there's been one elector that has changed. The most recent time that we've seen someone cross party lines was back in 1972. There was a Republican elector, Roger McBride, who voted for the Libertarian candidate in that election rather than voting for Richard Nixon. So he crossed lines as a Republican elector. He voted for the Libertarian candidate. But typically what we see are defections within the same party, usually on the losing side. And I'd said before that I thought most of the faithless electors would be voting against Hillary Clinton, and that's what we saw today happen. We had 6 people who were faithless electors so far. Not all of the votes at this point have been recorded, but we've had 4 in Washington state and 2 in Texas. And remember, in some states, like for example in North Carolina, if you do not follow the popular vote, you are fined $500 and replaced. I believe that's what we should see happen if we even have to have people. Once we have the State Board of Elections who are in charge of the elections, once they certify the elections, it seems to me they ought to just report the total number of electoral votes that they have to the federal government at that point, rather than allowing this to become a grandstand for political protests. Now, in Washington, of the 4 people who refused to vote for Hillary Clinton, 3 of them voted for Colin Powell, and 1 of them voted for Faith Spotted Eagle, who is a person who is leading the protests in Dakota against the pipeline. And I tweeted out, it's a bit ironic that these faithless electors voted for someone named Faith Spotted Eagle, but that's one way to give Hillary Clinton the bird, and that's what they did in that particular state. In other states, we'd had in Maine, one elector said, I'm not going to vote for Hillary Clinton, I'm going to vote for Bernie Sanders. He did that in the first round. They said, we're not going to allow that. So they had a second round. He went back and he voted for Hillary, and they said, that's okay, we're going to go with that. So that's what we saw in those 2 areas. And then we saw very late in the day, Texas meeting and casting their votes. And that put Donald Trump over the top, but we did have the faithless elector. I believe it was Chris Suprin. We don't know who voted for John Kasich. We don't know who voted for Ron Paul, but we had 2 people out of the Texas delegation that did protest votes. This, I believe, is going to multiply if we don't stop it. And understand, what these people are doing is beyond being faithless. They say they're following their conscience. They're exercising their free speech. Well, they are shutting down our conscience. They're shutting down our free speech. They're shutting down our votes because we did not vote for them. These people were chosen by the political establishment. They were chosen without any input from the general public. And if you go back, they call themselves the Hamilton electors. If you go back to the Federalist Papers, precisely the reason they created the Electoral College was to stop this kind of political cabals that are creating intrigue, that are creating tumult. That is what's happening now. That was what the Electoral College was supposed to prevent. And part of that was to say that we're not going to have any elected senators or congressmen as part of the Electoral College. But look at what happened in New York. In New York, 3 of the 29 electors were people like the sitting governor, Andrew Cuomo, the sitting mayor of New York, Bill de Blasio, and former President Bill Clinton. I would think that the former president would be excluded by that prohibition in the Constitution, even if you're going to limit that to federal electors and say that it isn't, that it's okay to have people who are holding state office. So New York allowed that. Meanwhile, in Ohio, someone who was selected by Donald Trump, who actually won the election there, was forced to step down as they had some leftist liberals there file a lawsuit saying you cannot be an elector because you are a state representative. So that's the double standard that we're seeing. That is the subversion of the political process that we have to worry about. And moving forward, I think with all of the publicity that's been given to these faithless electors, I think if we don't get ahead of this and we don't shut this down, I think we're going to see a lot more of this when it comes around to the next election. And understand that it is a very important function that the Electoral College is doing in the sense that it gives each individual state a say in what is happening. If we didn't have this, as Donald Trump said, he would have only campaigned in 5 states rather than the 15 that he campaigned in. But think about that. When he campaigned in 15 states, that's only 30% of the states that are involved in the election. So when we look at the people who are complaining in New York and California, we have to understand the Electoral College was there as a firewall to keep 1 or 2 states from dominating the election and to keep their corruption contained within that particular state. If they're going to load the ballot up with their votes for their candidate, it's contained into that one state. The other way to look at this is the way Reason pointed out. They said it's kind of like the World Series. The World Series is a best of 7 games. You don't determine the winner by the person that scored the most total runs. It's 1 game at a time. And the election is really a series of 51 elections, 50 states in the District of Columbia. But as we talk about fraud, I want you to take a look at the IMF chief, Christine Lagarde. She is now a banker on the run. Talk about a bank run. Christine Lagarde, as French finance minister, approved a $417 million state payout to a business tycoon in 2008. She's now left the country before the trial verdict. So evidently she's thinking this isn't going to go her way. So she is on the lam. This is Lagarde on the lam. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk about this massive denial of service that has hit InfoWars. You know why they're doing it. You know they want to put a firewall around our site, keep you from getting our information. The way to do that, they've decided, is to shut down your ability to get to our stores. We're going to look at where this is coming from, and we're going to talk about what it actually is, because there's a lot of confusion from people. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
In case you haven't heard, InfoWars has become the most influential media outlet in America. We're making freedom go viral. And now we are proud to announce a new weapon in the epic battle against the globalists. InfoWars Prime, where you can watch live high-definition feeds of the Alex Jones Show, plus exclusive insider videos from the InfoWars crew and behind-the-scenes action. Go to Infowars.com/app and download today. InfoWars Prime is available right now for your iPhone or Android. You will have access to exclusive videos that you can't see anywhere else. And that means live coverage of events and breaking news on location as it happens. You can also take advantage of amazing deals from the InfoWars store that are only available for InfoWars Prime subscribers. That's InfoWars Prime at Infowars.com/app. If you can hear my voice, you are the resistance.